And I just want to make one disclosure at the beginning, and I'm ashamed to say it, but I am biased. Yes, I'm very biased. And let me disclose my bias up front so you can understand where I'm coming from. I believe that frontline sales managers like you hold the key to unlocking the performance of the sales organization and crushing their sales numbers. My whole business in the last 16 years and probably 16 years prior to that have been focused around creating great sales leaders who, if they are awesome, like the ones I'm going to talk about today, consistently crush their sales numbers. And my promise to you is over the next 45 minutes or so, and I'm happy to answer questions for as long as they come up, I'm going to share with you my 3 decades of sales leadership experience. I'm going to share the latest research on performance, research on the drivers of sales performance, given I come from a research-based industry. I'm also going to teach you how to develop, lead, and engage your salespeople to help them consistently crush their sales numbers. I know you're eager to find out what your awesome colleagues are doing to crush it. So let's get started. Just to be clear, this webinar is for any sales manager who wants to consistently crush their sales numbers. We also welcome sales executives and, of course, training and development people who are there to support sales management development. If this is you, you've definitely come to the right place. I think you're going to find the information I'm going to share with you today incredibly interesting. Now, the reality is, and I was a sales manager, I was also a VP of sales and national sales manager. The reality is so many sales managers I speak with today and I work with are working harder. They're putting in more hours and feel like they're constantly fighting an uphill battle to hit their quotas. It's a high pressure job. And without the right tools, it feels like you're pushing a rock up the hill. And I'm sure you guys can relate to this. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to share this information with you because I've assembled a bunch of really important data to make it very clear to you what your colleagues who are crushing it are doing. And I'm going to move quickly. So we've provided you with a work guide, which you can take some notes because there's going to be lots of actionable content. So be ready, take notes, get your guide out. Although you will get a copy of the presentation later. So what I'm going to cover just in a nutshell is I'm going to cover what I call the Stephen Rosen result zones, which is a very simple way of understanding where you sit and why and the impact that has. I'm going to talk about different leadership styles and the results they get. I'm going to talk about rewards and performance, sharing the latest research. What are the key drivers of performance? We've got some great data and why the odds are stacked against you. I'm going to share my formula, which is 5 steps to driving performance and helping you crush your sales numbers. And again, if you have questions, I'm going to wait till the end, but I've put a spot in place where I can drink my coffee and sort of open it up for questions. You guys ready to go? All right. So let's get right into it, okay? And I've created this as an illustration to talk about, because people say, well, Stephen, what's crushing it, right? That you talk about crushing it. Well, to me, anything over 100% of quota in a region, you're crushing it. And we all know how it feels to be crushing it. One, your reps are making bonus, everyone's excited, everyone's inspired, everyone is pushing. But only a small percentage of managers are crushing it and consistently crushing it. We have folks then who I call in the caution zone. They're close, they're 90 to 100% of quota for their region, but it's cautionary. There's a lot more stress on you. Things are not as fun. Some people are making bonus, some people are not. It's not always the best place to be. And then there's folks who are below 90%. And that may be a vast majority of regional sales managers or district sales managers. And we know the danger zone is fraught with turnover, issues. Sometimes your job is in danger, right? So we don't want to be in the danger zone. So let's really look at what is leadership. No, I'm jumping ahead here. So as you see in my chart here, Only about 10 to 20% of sales managers are consistently crushing it. The rest of you, and that's probably why there's so many people signed up here, are struggling to make their sales. They're overwhelmed, overstressed, and not getting the development they need to succeed. So what I want to know, and I want to take a poll here, and I want to know where you're at year to date. What zone are you in? Are you in the, can we put up the poll?
Yep, we got the poll up. And
okay. And so there should be three options there. Either you're in the crushing it zone, 100% plus, the caution zone, 90 to 100%, or in the danger zone. So this is completely anonymous. We're not going to judge you. We just want to, I want to get a sense as to where the audience is at vis-a-vis my numbers. So we'll collect the data and then we'll present it back to you.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking votes for another 10-15 seconds. So if you haven't let us know yet, please go ahead. And I think, all right, that should be about good. I'm going to go ahead and show you the results. There we go.
Okay, there we go. So congratulations to the 28% of you who are in the crushing it zone. Life is good, you're feeling great. You're probably here because you want to keep being in the crushing it zone. And then we have, if I can add quickly, 71% of you who are either in the caution or danger zone, much less in the danger zone, which is great. And for those folks in either of those zones, by the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you the holy grail, how to make sure you're in the crushing it zone. So from here, given we've got a lot of people are doing great, I just want to talk about leadership because your role in the organization is to lead, develop, and retain your top people. And let me just forward here. This is a quote from Peter Drucker. And this is one of my favorite quotes because sometimes we forget what leadership is. We think those great leaders like JFK get up and make speeches that inspire us. But what Peter Drucker said is effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Many of us like to be liked. Leadership is defined by results and not attributes. And I'm going to introduce you to three leaders. Each one has a different leadership style, and I'm going to contrast each of their leadership styles in terms of the impact on what matters, which is results. So here's our first leader, and for lack of a better name, we're going to call him Dick. Meet Dick. Dick has been a sales manager for 20 years. He was originally called Jack, but we moved his name based on his leadership style. He's been around for 20 years as a sales manager. He was an amazing rep and believes he knows better than his team. Guess what? His leadership style, I can only coin under the phrase, my way or the highway. He's an old school manager. He uses rewards and punishments. His leadership style is based on positional power and fear. Dick's sales leadership approach relies on using the stick to motivate. So how motivated do you think Dick's reps are? Well, certainly if he has millennials, they would never put up with this approach, my way or the highway. And certainly in today's economy, it falls short. Dick is experiencing pushback. His turnover is out of control. His approach may deliver in the short term. You may get short-term results with this approach, but he doesn't consistently crush his sales numbers. Now, you guys are welcome to type in, but do you know anyone like our friend Dick? Type in yes or no. And as you're doing that, we'll gear up for our next poll. So it'll give you some practice typing into the chat box. So do you know anyone like that, or maybe you exhibit some of his leadership styles? So let me ask a question here before we go on to our next leader. And I get a baseline of how you folks think. And the question at hand is, do you agree that highly motivated sales reps perform better and drive more sales? And there's basically three answers. We're making life easy. Oh, look, you guys are so fast. Okay. So we'll let it run. There's maybe another 5 or 10 seconds. What do you think, Eve?
Yeah, that's about right. And for the record, I love that pretty much all the responses we saw in the question panel were either yes or I used to be that person.
Oh, okay. Well, I was too. So I tell a slightly different story. Some of it's based on my leadership journey. I've just changed the names, but guess what? And pardon the pun, I was once a dick.
All
So
right.
I hope we're okay with that. We're not getting too racy, but thought I'd throw that in for a little bit of fun to kick off. The next are have nicer names. So let's roll it up here. We all seem to be on a very similar page. So kudos, 96% of you agree that highly motivated reps perform better and drive more sales. Few are not sure, and maybe we'll share some data to look at that, or we'll share some data later. And 1%, which is what, one or two people, feel no, hey, you're entitled to your opinion. I may not agree, but let's talk about our next leader, and his name is Pete. And Pete's a slick guy. He believes that he runs a high performance sales organization. He has bonuses. He has accelerator payouts. Once you hit over quota, your bonus starts to accelerate. He has a great trip for the top 10%. His reps are highly motivated. They even overlook some of the cuckoo policies that the company has that were inferior to industry. And Pete's pay for performance approach really does have many pros. And I just want to share some of the thinking around what Pete's doing in terms of Pete pay for performance. Rewards are exchanged for results. Compensation is tied to results. It's actually easy, and most people think it's fair. Most sales managers like this approach because they can see that easy connection. It encourages salespeople to improve their performance and productivity. And what management ends up doing in this is they start creating endless dashboards to measure things. But there are some challenges, and I've taken the Pete pay for performance approach as well in my leadership journey. And here's what happens. I'm not saying it doesn't work, and we'll talk about some data on this specifically. But what you do as a leader is you get locked into what I call a vicious cycle that at some point reaches a limit because you can't keep upping the ante, right? You just can't. Sometimes profitability impacts that. It also creates an environment of entitlement. And I don't know if any of you have lived in an environment where your sales reps feel entitled, they want more perks and more perks to perform. It doesn't work in the long term. And then the question becomes, what happens when quotas are difficult to achieve? Well, what if management's giving you a very difficult quota year and the reps are expecting to make tons of dinero, right? Pete's got a problem. What happens when your top performers decide that, hey, the competitor's offering even better awards and they're going to leave? So there are some issues with the Pete pay for performance approach. So let me ask another question before we get into some of the exciting data that I want to share with you. So let's tee up our last poll. And really what I'd like to know is, do greater rewards improve performance? Do better rewards improve performance? Again, you got 3 answers, and I'd like to know your honest opinion. Yes, no. Hey, maybe you're not sure. But
All right, and we're going to give this about 20 more seconds just to make sure that everyone has a chance to vote.
And we have like an interesting split here, Eve. Look at this.
Yeah, that is actually really interesting. That's pretty even. And we have a couple of people saying things in the chat like depends on short-term versus sustainable, or depends on how you define performance.
Well, sales to quota, if that helps.
All right. Well,
it's not that obvious because it's not always true that sales to quota is always an indicator of performance. But okay, well, we're just trying to open up some intellectual thought here, and we throw out these questions for fun. So don't try to think too deep into them. Just to share your gut response.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll. And
okay, drum roll, please. Does Naba have a drum roll? Okay. So that I would say, statistically, speaking, although I'm not a statistician, a majority said yes, but it's pretty split between the three answers. So my analysis of this is there isn't a clear-cut correlation. A vast majority believe that, hey, rewards do improve performance, but a third feel no, and a whole bunch are saying, Stephen, tell me what you think or show me the data. So without ado, let's just get into it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share some highly credible research on the very question we just asked. And I think these are some very high-powered studies that are done by some real top-notch leading groups, groups who have money, and they try to answer the question, do greater rewards affect performance or improve performance? So the first one was done by a pretty big group. For those of you in the US, you've probably heard of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. And they wanted to know the link between rewards and performance. And they engaged professors at MIT and other major US institutions to answer that question. They enlisted MIT students who we would believe are some of the brightest minds in the world. And the students were asked to play a number of games offering different levels of reward based on how well they did. So simple study, it's not about sales, it's just research into rewards and performance. And this is, in summary, one, as long as the task involves simple mechanical skills, bonuses and rewards worked. Okay, so if you're in a simple sales model, higher bonuses will improve performance. Okay, in a more complex sale or task, rewards led to poor performance. Okay, so let's soak that in. In complex tasks, large incentives led to poor performance. So those of you who said no, I guess it depends, right? Are you in a simple sale? Well, increasing bonuses and rewards will improve your performance. If you're in a more complex environment, it doesn't work. So here's another study that I thought was really interesting and want to share it with you. It was done by the London School of Economics, and they did a post-analysis on 51 financial incentive programs. And what they found was plans with financial incentives can result in a negative impact on overall performance. Okay, so we've got two real cool studies done by large, high reputable organizations that found that rewards and performance are not correlated.
That's really interesting. Stephen, before you go on, would you be able to really quickly for us, one of our audience members was wondering about how you would define complex and simple in this context?
Well, the tasks were simple things. One was getting a candle to stand up in on a box. So you had to do a variety of tasks to make it work. Mm-hmm. But the inference is, or the result is, if things become too complex, right, we tend to have blinders on when rewards are bigger, mm-hmm. and we don't see the full picture. So our ability to solve complex issues gets diminished when there's higher rewards at stake.
Got it. All right, thanks.
So we become, I don't know, ultra focused on the result, and sometimes we need lateral thinking in more complex environments. Mm-hmm. The solution is not an obvious, hey, I strike a match and this happens, as an example. Or if we're trying to golf, it's not just one thing; it's a combination of things to make sure we hit the ball properly.
Right.
So great question. I was hoping no one would ask. No, I'm teasing. I was prepared in case there was that one person who asked. But so really, what we've heard is these two studies. Not to say that they're the only studies out there, but in my mind, they've busted the myth that rewards lead to better performance. And if you look at how the group responded, it was very much split. So what's the implication here to us as sales leaders? The research shows us that traditional sales leadership approaches are not giving us the results we need. The research shown us that high rewards don't always lead to better performance. Yet many sales managers like this one here and sales leaders continue to throw money at their salespeople when they're not performing, right? We do it all the time. Oh, let's build a contest because we're not making our numbers this quarter. So the problem is that many sales leaders see no need to change, or they don't know what to do, right? So if this describes you, I know you don't want to be left behind in this constant thing of throwing money. So stay tuned because we're going to give you some solutions here. So just to summarize it in terms of what my message here is, there's a mismatch, right? A clear mismatch between the science on performance and rewards and what sales leadership does. So really, if we break down, because we did agree, I think it was 95%, yeah, I think it was 95%, that highly motivated reps perform better. So science is telling us that external motivators don't work. Then why do we continue to throw money at the problem? Well, we know that highly motivated people drive greater performance. Yet, we are finding traditional motivators are not giving us desired outcomes. So what do we do? And Stephen Covey, in his upcoming quote, I think captures it, and we'll elaborate on this. But motivation is the fire from within. It's not external, right? So if someone else tries to light the fire under you, which is like our leader Jack, who tries to burn you to perform, chances are it'll burn very briefly. So how do we light the fire from within? And that's really what I want to spend the rest of the talk about. So how do we light the fire from within? How do we get our team so fired up that they'll do whatever it takes to be successful? And the answer is working on internal motivators. The problem is most sales leaders don't know how to get their reps fired up. So we continue in this cycle of throwing money at it. I'm going to just grab a drink, and if there's any questions, Eve, I'd be happy to answer them, and then we'll talk about our third sales leader, who's an awesome one, and her name happens to be Jane.
All right, sounds good. So we have gotten some questions so far. One that came in pretty recently that I think is an interesting one. What do you think of monetary rewards? Is it possible to frame monetary rewards in such a way that they cause motivation? So if you're finding the intrinsic motivation, like someone really wants to buy a new house or take a vacation, if you can connect that directly to monetary rewards, does that make them more effective, do you think? Or even in that case, would you say that they're not necessarily the most effective choice?
Well, you know what? External motivators do work. And I tried to share some of the challenges with them when you're in a leadership role, is creating this whole environment of entitlement. Yes, people are motivated short term by money. So if the short-term goal is to, have a down payment for a mortgage, hey, it works. If it's to pay off a line of credit, I'm not, even though the research said that the performance and rewards are not necessarily connected, or that one produces the other, there's not a causal effect. You know what? I know we all know that rewards work. The question is, what these people have signed up for is know how to consistently crush their sales numbers. And there's a difference, right? So, you may, as Stephen Covey says, tying it together may light the fire under you, but it burns very briefly, because then you need the next fire and the next fire and the next fire. Right. So rewards work. I'm just saying that they only work until you get them. Then it's like, okay, what's next for me?
Yeah, and it's like you were saying, it's you have to keep raising the ante.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It becomes ugly.
Yeah. All right. We had a couple other questions. One other one, and I want to let you keep going because you've got a lot of good stuff still coming. But somebody was wondering how you would define specifically like sales processes as complex or simple. So like, can you give an example of a simple sales process where monetary incentives might work better versus a complex one where they wouldn't.
Yep, yep. So if you look at very transactional sales, so if I'll look on the simple sale, you go to a store and, the person is a commissioned salesperson and, they're trying to sell you jewelry or some item. That's kind of a simple sale, right? You're trying to find out what the person likes and work within their budget. So that would be one definition. On a complex sale, you're dealing with multiple buyers who have multiple objectives. Let's say you're selling a computer software solution. So, let's say you're selling a CRM, right? You want to make sure that the salespeople are happy, the IT people are happy, the financial people are happy. That's how I define a complex sale. It's got multiple buyers, multiple levels, and multiple objectives.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that. That may have been obvious for most of the people in the audience, but it was not obvious for me. So I really appreciate you clarifying that.
Well, thanks for that question. So let's move forward. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end, and I'd like you to meet Jane. Jane's leadership style is focused on coaching and developing her salespeople. Jane understands that coaching is the key to, hear this, to lighting the fire from within. Okay, she's read the research that coaching improves engagement, reduces turnover, and improves performance. Jane believes, like Stephen believes, incentives are good, but when you add coaching, it gets much better. Now, the problem with coaching is it's hard to do, it takes more time, but it's like Buckley's, it works. I assume everyone has Buckley's in their market. In my experience, sales leaders that embrace coaching have learned that it can be a very powerful way to motivate and drive sales because it works on the internal needs and motivators of the individual. Sales managers who can coach and drive internal motivation, guess what? They're highly sought after. They consistently crush their sales numbers. They make more money. Their teams make more money. And many are getting promoted to directors and VPs. So this is Jane. I've made some pretty heavy claims about coaching, and I'd like to be able to back them up. So what I'm going to do, and not to say these are the pièce de résistance, but there's some really good studies. I come from the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not a research guy, but studies were the way we sold and got drugs approved. So I want to share with you what the research says on coaching and performance. Some of you may have heard this before, so I'm going to share not only the upsides for you, but what the realities are. So let's talk about coaching effectiveness. The Sales Executive Council, or as they're known as Corporate Executive Board now, in a study they had with over 2,000 sales managers, found that sales managers who are highly effective coaches generated 19% more sales than their less effective colleagues. And if you think of anyone who's in the danger zone, you're like 20 points out. A 19% lift in sales going from 83 to 102 is pretty damn substantial, right? I mean, that's exciting. If you can become an effective coach, you're going to be in the crushing it zone. Here's the reality. I've got a good friend, Dave Curlin, who gathers, he's from the Objective Management Group and Dave Curlin Associates, and his data shows that only 7% of you are effectively coaching. So the upsides are there, but only a few of you are really capitalizing on them. So if half of you could become effective sales coaches or coaching effectively, you are going to make a lot more money. Okay, the next thing, frequency of coaching, right? So again, the Sales Executive Council, same study, found that sales reps who receive 7 to 9 hours per month significantly outperform reps that did not receive coaching by the tune of 17%. So, and this was regardless of how well you coach. So just get out there and coach and you're going to do better. Like Nike says, just do it. And I know there's reasons why managers don't coach. Some of it is they don't like it. 2, they don't know how to do it, or 3, they're too busy with minutia, because if you want to be in the crushing it zone, all you need to do is get off your butt and get out there and coach. So here's what on the downside, only 14% of you are spending enough time coaching. Well, my question is, what are you doing besides coaching? It's like sales reps. If only 14% of sales reps are making enough calls to generate sales, we'd be in a horrible situation. The last piece of data I want to share is from a different group. It's CSO Insights, and they found that sales managers who follow a formal coaching process help their reps close 17% more sales versus those who don't have a formal coaching process and are left to their own devices on coaching. The problem here is, and I did my own study, it's called the STAR Sales Management Survey, and we found that only 44% of companies have a highly effective and well understood coaching methodology. So half of you don't have a methodology or an understood methodology. Wow, that's probably easy to change. So let's look at the good, bad, and the ugly. I call it the good news and the bad news. In summary, highly effective coaching drives 19% more sales. Less than 10% of you are really effectively coaching. So if you were to make that one change, I can assure you, but the likelihood is you'll move up if you're in the danger zone. That 18% that are in the danger zone can move up to caution or crushing it. Again, more frequent coaching increases sales by 17%. Following a coaching methodology, also 17%. So these are significant impacts that coaching has. And of course, the odds, we only have 14% of sales managers that are out there spending enough time coaching. And I don't know what else you're doing, but my message is if you're not out there coaching frequently enough, at least one day per rep per month, then you're missing the boat. I don't know what you're spending your time on, but if it's improving expense reports, your administrator can do that. And far too many companies just don't have a formal coaching methodology. Okay, let you soak that in for a second. So I come back to our three leaders, and maybe we're a little bit of each one. Like Dick and Pete, we've all made mistakes trying to lead and motivate either through fear, offering unsustainable incentives. They both work to some degree. I'm not saying they don't work, but wouldn't you want to be able to crush your sales numbers? And Jane has the answer. So maybe you're still there. Maybe you're one of those gentlemen, and maybe you're trying to get to coaching for performance. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to share with you what I've learned working with sales leaders just like you. So here's a guy, and I don't want to pick on him, and I don't have a name for him, but you can make up your name. He doesn't look like, maybe he's the guy from WKRP in Cincinnati, Les Nessman. But if you're stuck in the 80s or 90s, how do you become the manager that drives internal motivation? How do you transform your sales leadership style? And how do you consistently crush it? Well, in the next few slides, I'm going to share with you some good news. So if you say, hey, Stephen, you know what? I like what you're saying. I really, I'm inspired. I really want to live in the crushing it zone. So, you need to make some changes. And I'm not talking about changes in your reps. I'm talking about changes in your leadership style. And really, it's moving from the old way, which we talked about, whether it's directing for performance, paying for performance, to the new way of really coaching your people and really focusing on internal motivation by allowing them to grow and capture their internal needs. So I'm going to share 5 steps that I share with each of my clients on how to make that happen. So, I don't know if they're considered paradigm shifts, but they're certainly shifts. And the most critical shift in becoming an awesome sales leader or a great coach involves moving from telling people what to do, like our good friend Dick, to asking people. Okay, the my way or the highway doesn't work. I call this, and it's in the center of the diagram up top, having a coaching mindset. And it's the center of all the other steps that I preach. In order to be an effective coach, one needs to have their coaching mindset on. And let's talk about what that looks like versus the old way versus what I'm saying is the way to really be awesome. The old way is we tell people what to do, and I know it's far easier to tell but asking is the way to go. Believing people have their own solutions and come up with their own. The old style is judgmental. Oh, you're not working hard enough, as opposed to being curious. Tell me how you're going to get there. You want to help the reps self-evaluate through asking effective questions. You want to listen. And as a coach, it takes a high level of self-awareness that you're not jumping in. Where many of the old guys, again, like our friend Dick, he always thinks he's a super rep. He knows better. So the first paradigm shift, and I'm going to talk about how that feels, the asking versus telling, but it's moving from telling to asking people. And if we look, I tried to summarize it with visuals, but also how it sounds. When you're telling people, you ask questions like, why did you do that? Or you should do that, or do it this way. As opposed to, you're coaching for performance, Jane, how are you doing? What do you think you can do? What would you do in this situation? It frames the conversation differently. So your first step and your first paradigm shift to really start coaching for performance is to shift your mindset to a coaching mindset. Step two, as we go through the model, it's very critical that we ask questions to help our reps create greater self-awareness. It's to coach people, they need to be self-aware, right? So they can self-evaluate. Otherwise, you're telling them how they are doing. Now, the fact is, if you're a good manager, you're out one day a month. My question to you is, if you don't have self-aware people, what are they asking themselves the other 19 days in a month when you're not with them? It is difficult to coach salespeople who are not aware, and we have techniques to do that. But the old way, the manager would go out with them and say, hey, Tony, you need to do this, this, and this. They may even tell the reps how they should do it. They may decide that this month you need to work on X, and next month you need to work on Y, and they're only giving feedback, okay? Where the new style manager, or the coach, asks the sales rep to self-evaluate. They ask them and ask them and ask them questions to create self-awareness. And they have the rep become a self-manager, which for the other 19 days, the questions you ask them, they begin to ask themselves. And that's when you know you're doing a great job as a coach. Step number three, and for me, whatever I do, I really believe focus is critical. And the old way of doing things is, the manager would go out and think, oh my God, this rep needs to work on so many things. Here are 10 things you need to work on. Make sure you get them done before I come back next month. And they tell the reps what they are. Oh, you need to work on closing, you need to work on probing, so on and so forth. And each time they may change the focus, where my belief, and this is an important one, is the only way to create change or improvement in people's performance, skills, or behaviors is to focus on one or two areas. We can't focus on 10. We can't focus on 6. 5 is even hard to focus on. So, and we don't tell people where they need to focus. We let them determine it. If it's sensible area, we let the sales rep decide where they're committed to improving upon. And the key is, and this is a statement I want to make, you need to stick with the focus. So if you define great coaching, to me, great coaching is if you're able to impact and improve, or help a rep impact and improve 1 to 2 areas in the course of 6 to 12 months, you're doing a great job. Okay, it's otherwise you never move the needle. If you're jumping around, change is hard. It's like if you go to the gym and say, okay, this week I'm working on my biceps and I'm going to work on them and they'll be fine. Next week I'm going to work on my legs. Well, it doesn't work like that. You need to constantly work at a skill to improve. Okay. Step 4. Again, one of my beliefs, I told you I'm biased. In the old days, or the old way, in terms of gaining a commitment, you'd leave, and I work with reps, and I'd write up a plan saying, you got to do X, you got to do Y, as we discussed. You say, can you get it to me for next week? and this is the way I would go ahead and doing it. No, part of the commitment is getting the rep. I call it building their self-directed POA, which is plan of action. So the rep has to build their own plan. If you want to empower them to grow and improve, you don't write the plan. You can facilitate the process, but they write their own plan. Part of writing, there's a real power to writing, because one, it crystallizes your thoughts, and two, it crystallizes your commitment because you put pen to paper. Okay, and it also empowers the individual to their plan. So, you know, if you said, hey, how did you work on the stuff I sent you, as opposed to how is it going with your plan? There's a big difference. Lastly, I feel like I'm preaching, but I am. Okay, so let me just switch pages here so I can make sure I have my notes. But the real power of coaching, and we all forget this, right? It's follow up. You know, so you've gone through the process of getting your people to evaluate themselves. You've had them pick one or two areas. You've had them build a plan. So you're getting very close to creating that change or that coaching for performance. The power of coaching is about accountability. So in the old days or old ways, you know, we'd send them the list, but we forget to follow up. We wouldn't circle back. If things didn't happen, we'd blame the rep for things not happening. With my approach is, I call it closing the accountability loop, where we hold the sales rep each and every time we interact with them. We come back to their plan. How's it going with closing? What was your last few calls? How did you close? We're always reviewing the previous commitment. And the key is, look, if we want to create change, change is hard, just like it's going to be hard for you to become all of a sudden you know, a manager who's coaching for performance, but it's about being positive and staying the course, staying focused on the areas that are important. So those are my 5 steps. And really, you know, if we take my message today, it starts with, if you want to crush it, it starts with your leadership as a salesperson. If you transform your leadership, you can transform your salespeople, and in essence, transform your results. So what your awesome colleagues are doing in terms of crushing it, one, they're not throwing away money on their reps to perform. They're starting to coach their reps. They're using a methodology. You're welcome to use my 5 steps, but you're welcome to use any methodology. I'm not saying one's better than the other. The best methodology is the one that's understood and followed. So you're at a point where you've seen the research on performance and rewards. You've seen the research on coaching and performance. And I've shared with you 5 steps to getting there, which actually brings us to a very interesting place. I call it the proverbial fork in the road. So we're at a point where we've got a couple options here. And as our friend, I don't know what his name is, but let's call him, I don't know, Fred. Fred says, you know what, I'm okay. And we'll leave Fred be. If you're Steve with the beard, you know, do you want to make a difference? Are you ready to learn more? Are you ready to take your leadership to the next level? And here are the choices. So Fred basically belongs on this management team. You know, for those of you who think you're okay, hey, good for you. You can stay the course, you can do nothing, and you hope that things improve like this sales management team. Or what I have for you is, if you want to learn more, feel free. I've got a white paper, which actually is the impetus for this presentation. It's called The New Sales Leadership Paradigm, How to Lead Your Team to Crush Their Sales Numbers. And it's available on my site. You can take this down. It'll also be sent out to you, but it's if you go to starresults.com/download-free-white paper, I'm happy to send you out a copy of The New Sales Leadership Paradigm, which talks about many things I just spoke about today. And if you say, hey, I really want to learn more, then there are a couple ways that I work with sales managers and sales management teams, and I'm going to share those with you. You know, so here we go. And I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. We're going to open it up for questions, but I've shared with you how your organization can benefit. And here are the 3 ways that I work with companies. Number 1, hey, if you want to work online, we've developed a suite of online products, whether it be the focused sales coaching. We've got coaching assessments, which is the coaching effectiveness snapshot. We have online coaching opportunities, which are short, sharp coaching sessions, and a variety of other things which you can find on a separate site. And all you need to type in is salesmanagertraining.thinkific.com. And that will take you to our online site, and you're welcome to peruse. And there may be some good information there and some good learning for you. If you say, hey, you know what? I think the sales management team can benefit, and we have what's called a coaching mastery program where we help transform sales managers into master sales coaches. And we take a revolutionary approach to training. It's not training, it's actually development, where there's a large coaching and cadence component. And if you go to starresults.com /sales manager, /sales manager sales.manager training program, you can find out more. Just go to Star Results and navigate your way through. And the last thing that I love doing is working one-on-one with sales leaders, and it's our executive leadership coaching program, which we've got rave reviews, and so many folks have really benefited from that. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Again, I'd like to thank BrainChart for sponsoring the webinar.